Welcome to another episode of the Scaling Creative Podcast. We're thankfully chose to be with us today, and I'm excited about this episode because I get to call you guys friends, but you're also just entrepreneurs and just incredible people to be around. So I want to welcome to the podcast today, good friend Dave Wise, Annie Nab, and Allison from the previous podcast. Today we're going to talk all about the entrepreneurial roller coaster and the ups and downs that, no question, especially during this time, are inevitable. So first of all, welcome to the podcast. How's everybody doing?
Doing great. How about you, Scott?
Right.
Doing great.
Awesome. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
First time ever on a podcast.
Ever on any podcast?
Any podcast.
So you've been on a lot of television things, but this first podcast?
Yeah, I know. I'm going up in the world.
How
Here we
about
go.
that? This is, quite the podcast to start on, millions and millions of people every single week. Just kidding. So Dave, take a second first to introduce yourself to the podcast, a little bit about what you do and who you are.
Yeah, so I'm a serial entrepreneur. I love business. We currently own 6 1-800-GOT-JUNK franchises in 4 different states. And we own an ad agency. We own a thrift store, a demolition company, and some real estate, other kinds of crazy stuff.
The biggest mix of companies ever. So what is 1-800-GOT-JUNK for those people that don't know that?
So 1-800-GOT-JUNK's a full-service junk removal company. It's a franchise. We're based out of Vancouver, Canada. That's where all the calls come into Vancouver, Toronto. And we basically go into people's houses or business and remove all the junk that they don't want anymore. So, when the stuff starts piling up in your garage and you're like, I can't park my car in there anymore, we can come out, clear that out, and get your space back. So it's actually been around since 1989. Brian Scudamore started it. He has a great story. That could be a whole podcast by itself. But he was going through McDonald's and said, hey, I think I could do this. Started a company called Rubbish Boys, converted it to 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And right now there's 156 franchises over Canada, Australia, and the U.S.
And how long have you had them?
So I actually started back in 2006. And at that time, I jumped in part-time. And then 2010 is actually when I started in the business full-time. So it's been a crazy journey so far.
That's awesome. So what has made you get into so many random businesses?
Yeah.
Or what made you get into junk removal? Like, why did you think that was a good idea?
Yeah, actually, I thought junk removal was a terrible idea. My mother-in-law actually saw a truck at King of Prussia Mall, and she's like, hey, this is the best idea you've ever heard of. And I was like, that's stupid. Who would ever pay to get rid of junk? And I went on their website at the very beginning where it kind of like explains, what a day in the life of the franchise partners. It's like a little cartoon or whatever, but it was kind of like you get into the office and you meet with your team and your guys, you get them all pumped up, and then you go out and do marketing. You put on this blue wig on your head and stay on the curb and wave at people as they drive by just to create commotion and brand awareness, because back then it was really big, the guerrilla side of stuff. We didn't have the money to pay for the ads, etc. And then you maybe go to a realtor's office, talk to some realtors, and end back with your guys at the end of the day. And I just went through this video and I was like, this is so cool. It'd be so awesome to be part of this and do all those things. Like for me, I'm ADHD, LMNOP. I can't stay concentrated on one thing for too long. So
yeah, we're going to talk about that.
But that just made tons of sense to me. And we contacted them and started talking to them about what it's like, and they said it's going to cost $100,000 to start a franchise. And I looked at my bank account and I had $1,200. I was like, well, that was a stupid idea. And the $1,200, it's all I got. I was making good income, but I didn't have the money. And then about 3 months later, they called me up and they said, hey, Dave, we have some other people from the Lancaster area coming up to buy franchises. What if we paid for you to fly up here? I was like, hey, free trip to Vancouver. I've never been there before. And we were able to fly out there, go through their whole experience. And they said, great, we're going to give this other person a franchise first, but we'll give you a second franchise. And I was like, how am I going to make this work? So we got a home equity line. I really don't know how we came up with the money. My dad actually worked free for the first year running it. And somehow we cobbled enough together to be able to make it happen to our first year in sales. And then, it just blew up from there.
That's crazy. So Annie, welcome to the podcast as well. Introduce yourself a little bit.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Yeah, so I started working for David right out of college, so I graduated in December, and I started as the director of recruiting for all his 1-800-GOT-JUNK franchises. So we recently brought on a new recruiter, so that's going awesome, and I'm kind of transitioning into some marketing ninja roles, as we like to call it right now. Not even totally sure what the job title would be, but it's super exciting just to learn about the junk businesses and the advertising firm and everything. So many different hats to wear, but it always keeps things interesting for sure.
And you're an entrepreneur at heart too.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
know that's inside. That's why I wanted to have you on, because I think we all have these interesting different ideas and things that always float about. So it's cool. Well, thanks for being here. I definitely want to talk. And Allison, I guess we should probably, just for those who just joined this podcast for the first time, Allison, hey, introduce yourself.
My name's Allison. Hello, guys. Actually, I just hit my 1 year here.
That's
at
right.
Scaling
Woo!
Yeah,
That's
but
right.
it's been such a fast year, you know?
It is,
Like,
the
first of
wildest
all,
year.
we had 5 months ripped from us that doesn't really feel like real life.
Still being ripped from us,
But, yeah. So, yeah, I've just been doing some editing, shooting, learning a whole lot this past year. Got to be on some podcasts. Excited to be on some more.
So no cake for your 1 year anniversary
I didn't get cake.
Yet.
or balloon?
Yet.
No balloon.
But she just got a house too, and that's way more exciting. So
You bought her a house? What kind of perks are these?
So, that's your 1 year.
She's got her first house. So it's exciting. It's awesome. We're excited to have everybody here. We're going to talk today about the entrepreneurial roller coaster. We're going to talk a little bit about work-life balance. We're going to talk a little bit about, obviously, COVID, which is impossible not to somehow mention. But I think this is just a good topic to talk about, because I think there's a lot of people that would naturally say they have or they want to be an entrepreneur. I feel like this is now, like right now, the gold pinnacle. Back in the day, it was like everyone wanted to be athletes, everyone wanted to be all these different things. And I feel like more than ever now, you see everyone wanting to just own their own business. And I think people make that mistake sometimes because they don't realize that there's some really good things about owning a business and some really terrible things. Something like COVID happens. I think a lot of people have realized, okay, maybe I don't ever want to own a business as well. But just the everyday ups and downs of being an entrepreneur is just really difficult at times, and it can also be really lonely. What is kind of, as you look back when you first started your entrepreneurial journey, what was the first entrepreneurial move you ever made? Like, how young were you?
I was in preschool.
And what did you do?
And I started selling jewelry to the people who were babysitting me. My mom went to racquetball practice, and I was like selling stuff. And then, I went from there to like kindergarten. In kindergarten, I was selling stuffed animals to the 5th and 6th graders in the back of the bus, so I got to sit in the cool seats. It was a great moment. But my first real business, I think, was probably in high school, and we did smart cards. So my dad actually came up with the concept of having these, then he wasn't doing them, so I said, hey, I'll try to do it. And it was like a discount card where you have like half off at Dunkin' Donuts or 10% off McDonald's or something like that. And I saw lots of different companies doing that, and I said, hey, I could do this myself. And so I had a $1,000 laminating machine, and I went around to each business and said, hey, for $400 you can be on the back of this discount card. And then they would say no, and then the next one, hey, we'll do it for $300 now, and kept going until it was like free.
So you learned what it was like.
I learned the price things, and some people were like, yeah, I'll do it for $400, and other people were like, no. When it got to free, then they jumped on board. And it was really cool because I was able to do those, make those for the school. It cost me like 25 cents to make. We were selling the school for $2.50, and then the school was selling for $5. So they made thousands of dollars just off those. But I mean, it's every minute of every day where I'm walking into a situation and I'm driving down the road and I look at it, I'm like, man, I should really start a lawn mowing company. Or I wonder how plumbers work.
Yeah. So you knew at a really young age, obviously that was naturally in your blood, which I feel like I feel like there's the difference between feeling like you maybe want to own your business and like it's just in your blood that it's impossible to imagine ever working, not even for someone, because you're working for your employees at all times anyway, but it's just kind of, I feel like, naturally in certain people. Do you feel like being an entrepreneur or an entrepreneurial mind can even be taught, or do you think you either have it naturally or you don't?
Yeah, I think every situation's different, and it also depends on how you're brought up. Like, is that something that in your family was a reality? For me, I know Annie, you're the same way. We saw it in our parents, and my family, my grandfather, my great grandfather, and that type of stuff. So like that was a reality, and like going with my dad on a business trip when I was young, and seeing, his secretary and their warehouse and that, I was like, wow, this is so cool. Like, this is something I want to be a part of. So I always thought, that's really the pinnacle, either sales. But I mean, it just depends on where you're at. Like, if you get out of college or you go to school, you get a great job and you see, a job or an experience that, you love, you can just go forward with that. And then maybe something happens along the way. You have one of those, valleys, and you're like, oh crap, this isn't as good as I thought it was. Maybe I need to go in a new direction.
But would some of you agree, though, that I think it's also, we're in this different time right now where it feels like everybody feels like they need to own their own business, that I feel like I see a lot more people than ever like totally not content working for somebody because they feel like they could just do it themselves, or they should do it themselves. And I don't think that's good either, because I feel like there's a lot of entrepreneurs that like shouldn't be.
Yeah, and I think like the emphasis on having a side hustle, even more so than just like owning your own business, is so like apparent right now. Everyone's trying to at least having like some other source of income, because if like COVID taught us that nothing is secure 100%, right? So it's just like, how much more can you push the limits? And I do agree. I don't think everyone should be an entrepreneur. And I think we're seeing the businesses that are falling through the cracks right now, who are totally failing in the midst of COVID. So that's just interesting to see, who's going to survive this and who is maybe, born to do it versus not. Survival of the fittest, if you will. But it's very interesting to see.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that COVID taught even me, was just, you naturally, when you instantly are taken away from what you do every day and you have some free time, what you naturally go to do with your free time really tells you like where your actual passions are. And I feel like a lot of people, whether it's even starting a business or like you said, there's nothing wrong with just having a side hustle just because you enjoy it. I think everyone should have something they do that's not their job to just keep them sane. And if you do it well enough that you can make it your job, great. But it's just beneficial. Like, you're super into fitness and you're into other things, but like everyone should do something, right? Like, so you don't just have work at all times in your brain.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, people who, have great ideas, they think they want to be an entrepreneur, doesn't mean that they can't be, even if they can't execute. It's always about putting the right people around you too. Like, you can always have support from others. You can get a team together. So just because like you love working a job for somebody else and you have ideas doesn't mean you can't implement them. It's just that, not everyone can just start off owning their own business right away.
Yeah.
There's a lot to learn. And I think a lot of people maybe start off thinking it's easier than it is.
Oh yeah.
And then, you have a lot to learn and sometimes fail because some hardships come along or you didn't plan properly. COVID happens, which nobody can plan for. But
well, yeah, I think a lot of people see the boss and see what they see is just the time that they're with them at their normal hours, and they see freedom and they see kind of the choice to do whatever you want and different things, but they don't see the countless hours that you work at home on weekends, when someone doesn't show up, when something's not right, when something has to be repaired, when they don't see all those things. So it always looks super glamorous, because it's like, that would be so nice to just make up all the rules. Yeah, but I also have to pay for all the rules. Like it's always really cool until something especially like this happens. I think the last 10 years more than anything has had so many fake entrepreneurs, because it's been such an amazing last 10, 15 years of the economy since 2008, that if you couldn't make it in the last 10 to 12 years, you have no chance moving forward, because it's been so easy. This was the first thing that kind of actually slowed some things down for businesses, that made them like everyone was affected in some way. But I think it does weed out some of the people that are like, man, in this next chapter, maybe I'd rather just be a general manager or a manager and actually somehow be able to clock out. Like, I don't know what that's like, but it seems like sometimes I would prefer to be able to clock out. Do you like?
No, I think there's certain people's personalities that are set up where, they don't want the responsibility of a call coming at 9 o'clock at night or, 6 o'clock in the morning, and hey, this person called off or this happened, where they have to deal with all those problems. I think that, that's just how people are built. And, for us, we're really big on the equity partners. And, we made a pact a little while back that our goal, we had big goals. We set huge goals. So our goal for 2027 is $100 million in sales in our organization of all of our companies. But on top of that, we're looking to actually have 30 equity partners. So 30 people who, we date a little bit, they maybe worked for us for 2 to 3 years. So we really know the person and really feel comfortable with their personality and their values and, how they're driven, and put them in a position where, we buy another business or we start another business, put them in charge of it, running it, where it takes the risk away. Because a lot of people just don't want to, I can't leave my job because how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to pay my car payment? So it takes a little bit of the risk away because, I'm shouldering a lot of that, but then they also don't have as much upside. But I mean, it makes a great situation because we can put the accounting piece in, we can put the financing piece in, we can put the marketing that maybe aren't really their strong suits and let them really push their operational prowess or whatnot.
And I think that's super important. And I think that I see that you do that very well in your entrepreneurial journey and I've realized this too, how important it is to put people around you, like you said, to do the things that you're not good at. Like I've always not been a fan of the idea of like improving your weaknesses. I feel like you should just go all in on what you do well and have people around you to improve your weaknesses rather than spending time on the things that you're not good at. But I feel like naturally, like you and I are similar in certain aspects of our brain in the manner that we're full of ideas and full of things all the time. But sometimes the bad part about that is sometimes the employees can leave with like, okay, great, that was all super exciting next to the pep talk, but what in the world are we supposed to do next? And how important it has been for you to surround yourself with people that can do some of the things that naturally you would not want to do or not do well or whatever. Because I think you do that really well. You're very good at being like, talk to this person about that because I have no clue. You just come up with ideas.
Yeah. I think it actually really came back to looking at like psychological profiles of like, who I actually am. And I remember it was actually this big, when I was working for an accounting firm, this big group came in and they do all these profiles on you. And they sat there and they said, look, you're a terrible manager. I'm like, I am not a terrible manager. I'm the best. I'm like #1 regional manager in this group. And we said, but what you're really good at is, coming up with ideas. Like they should lock you in a closet for 3 years and you'll knock it out of the park. And he's like, you're money motivated. I'm like, I'm not money motivated. I drive a 150,000 mile car, all that type of stuff. But on the flight back, I really started like examining. I was like, maybe I am like the money motivated was maybe more of like a scoreboard. Like, maybe it's not actually having the cash in the bank, but like showing that I'm winning. And, then, even with my entrepreneurial journey, when I started, I thought, okay, I'm the president of the company. I need to sign the checks. I need to make sure the accounting's right. I need to do that type of stuff. And I read a book by Gino Wickman that's called Traction. And it talks about the entrepreneurial operating system. And it's like how to run your business. And it was the first time where I heard the term really visionary. And it's the person who comes up with the ideas and comes out with a million ideas, and then they have an integrator, and that person's basically poking holes into all of your crazy ideas. Like, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. That actually might work. So, they drain down, the 150 ideas I come up with a day and, pick out 1 or 2 that really can, drive forward, and letting that person take care of a lot of stuff that I thought as the president of the company, I need to handle. I need to be in charge of everything. And really it's like, hey, I can stay up here in the clouds, deal with big problems, see, the vision of where we're going, motivating people, thinking about culture and building that up, and then have somebody who's maybe my guy, Jason, I call him pessimistic. He calls himself realistic, but that realistic or pessimistic person, depending on who you are, help drive the business. And it's just where they say he's like the yin to my yang. He grounds me and changes, my approach on things, and I think it helps the organization as a whole, and that's really what's really pushed us forward in the past 4 or 5 years.
I think that realist thing is a great word, because that's my type of personality type. It's like everything's possible in my head, but there has to sometimes be, my wife is my realist when she sometimes has to remind me. But it's super important to have someone that grounds you, or else you're just always up in the clouds thinking about the craziest ideas. And they're like, oh, you can't do them all. Someone asked me the other day, like, how do you overcome having so many ideas and being the master of none, but like having so many things? You sometimes, as I always said too, in a business, you can't have every single service possible, or else you're not really going to be known for anything. You can't be known for a million things. Like if you go to a restaurant and there's a million things on the menu items, usually they're not very good. You go to a restaurant that has 8 things, it's probably a really good restaurant. And I've always thought about that even as the thing that I can get myself in trouble with is having so many things that I ultimately feel like I probably could succeed in that. But what happens is if I do a little bit of everything, nothing will succeed. So how do you balance, and everyone speaking to this, like how do you balance actually trying to do everything but deciding what you want? Because for me, it's just I get bored too quick. Like I just want to do something else all the time. And like you just keep starting businesses, but like how do you even manage that? Like as soon as you start a new business, your brain power has to leave to go to it goes away from something else. So how do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's putting that person in charge that is running the business. And that's our big thing about equity partners is, you know, they can drive the business forward and they can reap the benefits of that. So just finding the right, I mean, in every business, it's about the people. It's, you know, finding the people who are those rock stars that can really drive the business forward, or, you know, maybe can be super organized if that's what you need, or maybe be super salesy if you need them to like recruit for people, or, you know, have come up with crazy ideas if that's what you need. So for me, from the visionary standpoint, it's not something that I need to be involved in the business every single day. It's like I need to be involved in the business for a short period because I'll throw so many different ideas. It'll give them enough work for like 6 weeks. But finding those individuals that work well, you know, within your systems and your organization and drive that forward. And, you know, for me, the other thing that started to help me is I now have Bobby, who's my chief of staff, and she's just trying to like keep me a little bit more focused and a little bit more on the rails instead of like always off-roading around. So that's definitely helped out. But, you know, it's great for me to be able to put somebody in charge and run them because, or have them just move forward with the vision of where we're going, because I couldn't do all that and I would be failing lots of times, and I failed many times. I mean, it's not that I haven't failed, and I failed in spectacular fashion.
Give us one of your biggest.
So
or your top three.
My biggest one was probably Boxaroos. So I thought this was the best idea ever. I was going to rent plastic boxes for people who are moving, and they're awesome. If you ever move with Boxaroos, you're going to think, wow, I can't believe I actually bought cardboard before, because for the price of cardboard, they'll come, you drop them off, you pack them all up, you can move them. It's easy to move in and out of the truck. Your stuff doesn't break. You leave it on the rain and they aren't going to get wet. It was just great. And I think I was a little bit ahead of the time. Commercial movers use them all the time. And when I started bringing them in, I thought this was awesome. So I went to the bank and I said, hopefully he doesn't see this, but I said, hey, I need a $10,000 loan to buy a truck. And he's like, well, think bigger. And you just don't say that to me. So I walked out with a $208,000 loan, started developing this brand and never really proved out the brand. And then eventually I was like, look, this is just ridiculous. I'm just going to make the monthly payment and not go on. So yeah, that was a very painful experience. And I didn't I went to college for a couple semesters and didn't really do that much from an education standpoint. So I feel these big business expenses were just lessons, the MBA classes that I needed.
Yeah, it is. That's where you learn most of the stuff is the failures, right?
No, yeah, that was really rough. And then I bought a carpet cleaning franchise because I thought this would be great. I could pair it with my same locations, and my dad was involved, and I thought, this is awesome. So we looked at buying another company or buying one of the franchises, and my CFO at the time was like, don't do it, we can't do it. And I'm like, okay, well, we just made a deal. She's like, okay, well, just buy one. And then I flew out to the franchisor and got all pumped up, and I bought 7 more. So I didn't listen to the people who are supposed to keep me on the rails. And another friend of mine actually owned one of these. He said it was great. And then I came back and started up, and then he called me and said, hey, I'm getting out. This is terrible. And it wasn't really a great business to be in, and it wasn't really a great franchisor to be with. And I mean, that makes a huge difference, the franchisor and the people who are guiding and leading it. And so after a couple of years, I was like, this is ridiculous. And we shut down, and another $200,000 loss.
So you learned. And I want to go back for a second, and I want to bring you to this, because I think it's an important part. Working for and with a person, because our personality types are similar. Speak to the leaders and people that also are like us of some of the difficulties and the not so good side of working with people like us. Because I want you to speak to people, and no one's going to get in trouble for anything they say. But I think it's important to realize that being a visionary and being all excited and all that can be great. You need those people to implement things, but there's also downsides that I think it's easy as leaders to feel like, well, I'm going to come up with ideas all day, not realizing that a lot of them don't get done. And what are some things that make it difficult, and how can leaders that are that way lead their teams better, hearing it from people that are led by people like that?
Yeah, I mean, working with Dave, it's funny because I'm also a visionary. We have the same personality types, I guess you could say. So it's almost like being very conscious of that and making myself, being kind of working on your weaknesses to some extent, right? And just being aware that, all these ideas, they have to trickle down at some point. So at some point you need to sit down and you need to be like, all right, these are awesome. We have 100 ideas on the table. We have 100 things we could film, 100 things we could go start a business tomorrow, which I'm sure you probably have like 20 domains to do so if we wanted to, which is awesome. But it's like, we need to pick one, which isn't really in my makeup either, but it's kind of forcing me to be like that, which is, it's good to some extent, because you need to get tangible steps at some point and start action instead of just kind of festering on, what's going to happen next? Where is this going to go in a week? Am I going to hear about this next week, or is it going to be out the window? And sometimes it is out the window, and that's okay. But you're kind of learning to roll with the punches in a way and be like, hey, Dave, are we actually going to do this? Or more likely, not Dave, hey, Bobby, do you think that this is actually going to happen? She's like, no. I'm like, cool, I'll put that on the back burner in a Google Doc until we circle back in a few months. And that's the way to do it, I think. Sometimes you just need to pick and choose the biggest things and be like, keep you on track, and then have someone else, Bobby, especially for us, have her keep us on track. So it's like, it's so many checks and balances. Just, that's my biggest.
All right, Allison, go for it.
I'm the Bobby and the Jason.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. She's gonna speak.
I'm the pessimist, but I call it realist.
Yeah,
I definitely call it realist, because there is absolutely nothing wrong with having creative ideas. That's an amazing thing that we as humans can do. And I, it's okay to be a visionary. It's okay to come up with a million things, but at the end of the day, you learn, over time. We can focus on these, you can be logical about it, and that's the only way to execute. So getting those people in place that are like able to actually help you realize, the things that you can do right now, the things that you can do later, and getting the resources in place to help follow through is great. But I think like a great team consists of the people who come up with the ideas, the people who execute, the people who, that's why we're all built differently, to have different roles in something like that. So, but I'm definitely the realist. I know you come to me with ideas all the time, and I'm thinking in the back of my head, that's not gonna happen.
No, and
but then there are some where I'm like, oh.
Yeah, and I think that's a great part of, like, I think one thing I've always tried to do is I bring ideas to my team and just like let them know kind of what I'm thinking. I'm not afraid if someone's gonna take an idea either in general, but I feel like there's some of the best things that have ever actually happened might have been an idea of mine, but like they didn't happen because of my idea. They happened by collaborating and letting people be devil's advocate of like, well, have you thought about this? I'm like, I haven't actually. Good point. Or the opposite. Like there's sometimes people that don't think all the time don't necessarily have the same ideas, but I think it's super important because that's what I'm realizing more and more, that I have to have some people around me that either can execute or at least help remind me to execute, because I don't have a problem executing on things, but I just forget to do it. So it's like sometimes bringing the ideas are more so that someone can remind me that I had it and be like, oh yeah, we should actually do something about that. But it is just so important. But I think what's hard about people when they start is like, it's easy to say that now, to have your Bobby and have a Jason and all these people. When you start, you're by yourself. And I think that's really
can lead
hard
to
for
burnout
people.
too. Like creatives who like try to control all aspects of it and they never actually get anywhere, then they realize, I can't do this, I'm so sick of it. And that's unfortunate, because even though the ideas were great, they just didn't have the resources in place to execute all of them.
And the problem is when you start, you don't have an option.
Yeah.
That's why it's also really hard for people to get to a spot of delegation, because when you start, you are everything and you have to be. But then naturally your ego can tell you that you're the best at them, even if you weren't the best. So as soon as you need to hire someone, you're like, they're not doing it the way that I would do it. Well, yeah, but remember, you're not actually an accountant. You're not actually but what do you say to someone that is new as an entrepreneur that can't hire people yet?
Yeah, I think the best thing to do is to use others or try to use others, like, family, my wife, my kids. I mean, my friends, my cousins, whatever it is, find people to actually like help you out. We're like, hey, I have this great idea. And I think a lot of times as a visionary, if you can cast this vision of this big idea of where we're going and what it's going to be, people want to jump on board. People want to be part of something, whether it is, something at church or a business or a sports league or whatever. People want to be part of that big organization.
So you feel like vision casting is very important. I know that.
Yeah,
right?
I think.
Why do you feel that's so important?
Because I think that's what gets people excited. I mean, even to come to work, if they have 3 different options, it's if they're just going to whoever gives them a job, then you probably don't really want them. But the people who are those rock stars, those A+ players, you have to show them, where you're going and what it's that organization that they're going to be a part of. Why do people want to go work at Google? Is it just because of the cool snacks, or is it because, hey, look, this is crazy. Like we're going to change the way people look at the internet and find information, and I mean they have.
And we've actually seen that filming with you guys. We've definitely noticed like you share your vision with your employees because that gets them pumped up. They don't just come to work every day for a paycheck. Like they have a goal because you shared your goal with them, and it's like it's so good to see the communication there.
Yeah, sometimes leaders don't talk to the employee. They talk like their main couple 3 people in their top level organization, and the other people don't even know.
It makes them feel all like a part of the main goal.
Yeah.
Right. Like when I graduated college, did I think I was going to work for a junk company? Like no. But it's like going back to keeping the main thing. Like what are your long-term goals as an entrepreneur, as a person? And like does the company that you're working for or what you want to start yourself, does it align with those? Does it get you closer to that?
And I think what you always talk about with people, which I like too, is if they have to know that there's opportunity for growth in the business as well, and the whole having equity partners and all that is exciting to people, because it's like you may not necessarily have thought that you would work for a junk company, but it's like maybe you love the idea of managing people and managing this and doing this. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy that doing it for a company that wouldn't necessarily be what you thought you'd work for.
Right.
And that's why I feel like people sometimes are jumping in so hard to try to own their own business when they're actually doing what they love doing, but they just don't own it. And it's like, if you love your job and you're
own your role.
Yeah,
the job.
Like, and realize that if you're really good at your role and you keep working hard, you'll keep making more money, and eventually you'll make as much money as you need anyway, and you can also still check out every once in a while, unlike an entrepreneur. Like people just, I think contentment is something a lot of people just aren't great at. And I'm guilty of that too, but just not being satisfied. Like there's always, but if you're in a job that never has potential for growth, of course you could feel like that, which is why I think you do that great. And letting people know that there's always somewhere else to go just keeps people in general, rather than thinking I'm just going to go to this company and I'm going to be the smallest on the totem pole and there's no room for growth. No one wants to be a part of that either.
Yeah.
You want to feel like there's not because I think people aren't just driven by money. They're driven by titles. They're driven by their position there. And some people, the title matters more to them than even the money they make. And so understanding the personality types you're around to know what drives people, I'm learning, is so important, because and realizing that drive changes when they're older. When they're single, their drive for what they're going after is different than when they're married and they have kids. And understanding what's so much different in Allison's life that drives her more now than it did is so important as you grow, or else you're never going to keep people happy.
No, I think, every situation is different, but the thing that is surprising to me is when I go and meet guys for like the first time, or, I mean, you guys have been out videoing guys and they're like, what are you going to be? Oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to be equity partner. And this is somebody who I haven't even met yet, but that is their drive. That's what they see. And, it's throughout our organization. There's guys who I was like, there's no way this person wants to move or whatever. If we have something, they're like, no, you don't understand. I'm ready. I'll go to California. I'll go to wherever. They're looking for that next adventure because they want to grow within the organization. The other thing, going back to what we were talking about earlier, is a lot of times also with my lots of ideas, I think that's how I process. So it doesn't really mean I'm actually doing it. Like, I'm like, hey, we should start a paving company, and this is what we should do, and boom, boom, boom. That doesn't really mean like, hey, I'm thinking about actually doing it. It's just the way I talk. Like other people, they just think it in their head, and that's it. I just blurt out what other people are thinking. And I think another thing too is teaching employees or educating employees on some of the other stuff that happens within a business, because I don't think they really understand that. So like what I was just saying, paving, I'm not really starting a paving company, but when you see, let's say you're working at a paving company and you're like, oh man, he's getting $10,000 to pave this huge giant driveway. He's pocketing probably like $7,500 or $8,000 because he's paying me, $100. And you don't think about buying the equipment, and you don't think about the taxes, and you don't think about the insurance, and you don't think about the accounting. And I love the exercise that we do with our truck team summits, where we take $100 and we show them where everything goes, because they think that, oh yeah, you're pocketing 50% of this money. And it's like, no, if I was doing that, I would be living in Aruba on a boat, or it's not Apple, it's not Salesforce, it's junk removal. And I think, teaching people that there is all those other expenses, and you have to pay for offices and advertising and cell phones and insurance, and everything has a cost. And I don't think a lot of times employees, especially if they're frontline and handling the cash on a regular basis, they don't really realize all those that comes into a business.
So we're going to jump into the topic no one really likes hearing about anymore. We're all pretty sick of it, but obviously COVID is still in existence, still as annoying as it was from day one, but a serious thing that obviously, is something that I think changed a lot of things. It changed business, no question. It's changing education. It's changing a little bit of everything. I want to talk a little less about just how it specifically impacted you, rather than what are some things over this time that you've learned, whether it's business, whether it's personal, whether it's just, I don't know, anything in the recruiting side, how that has changed things. What are some things that you've really seen that have just been so different that you may now take into the next, once we get out of the whole COVID thing, will help? Any big learnings that you've had so far?
Well, I think we all thought everything was a lot more secure than it really was. It wasn't like, getting groceries or that type of stuff. That wasn't something I ever thought, what if I couldn't do that? I never planned for the apocalypse. I don't have 500 days of food stored under my house or anything like that. But now it makes you think, okay, what is this? And I think in our own businesses, it's the same thing. There's different businesses that got punched in the face, and worse than that, they're not even in existence anymore. And luckily, I haven't been that way, but I mean, it did have a big hit at the beginning. But I think, over time that there's always going to be a place to make money. There's always going to be a business that needs to be happening. It might be different. And I think COVID just made that happen at a lot quicker pace. So where it might have changed over the next 5 or 7 years, it just happened in 6 months. And that's scary, especially if you're one of those people who has a business that was just decimated by this. But I think it also puts the fact that, we know as our organization, we want to be in a service-based business, and we want to be in something that we can just wow the socks off the customer, just give this unbelievable customer service experience. So they're like, I got to use these. If it's not something that is service-based, and it's not like I'm not making widgets or something like that, that's just not how I'm built. But there's going to be other opportunities. So if junk removal would disappear, we'd transition. We'd come up with a new thing. Maybe we're just the smile makers. We wash your front window and put the smile on your face, or whatever it is. Come up with something like that. And I think, that's something that I have, looked at is, what are the new opportunities, and where else can you make money? But it also has changed, the business. And, before it was hard to get people, and now it's even harder.
But
go ahead.
I was going to say the places that have succeeded through this, or at least hung on, are the ones who are able to adapt, change things, don't be stuck in the ways. You know what I mean? Like for 1-800-GOT-JUNK, the contactless junk was something I'm sure had to be thought up really quickly to adapt with the times, and then it ended up working. And the same with the technology that companies are using. If you don't adapt, then you're not going to make it when stuff like this happens. So it was a lot of learning, a lot of adapting, and I feel like the ones that made it through are the ones that are, willing to change things even quickly like that, and then keep it going, and always have plans for that in the future.
Yeah, you can't plan for a pandemic, but you can plan of you should always be thinking about what is your biggest threat to put you out of business, and think about how you can come up with that thing and put yourself out of business with the next company that would. Like, I think about that all the time. Like, the future of video production, if the future of video production is that people can do almost everything themselves on their phone, well, how can I lead the frontier of teaching people how to not use our service? Actually makes me win at the end. Versus being like, you have no chance of doing it yourself. I try to think about what would actually threaten me and create it, because someone eventually will put like, when Blockbuster was cruising, they were completely fine. They didn't think of that they might want to adapt to an online type of thing, and they called Netflix a nuisance at the time. And look what happened, because someone's eventually going to come up with something that doesn't make your service useful anymore. So how can you constantly adapt to thinking about what that is and come up with it first?
Yeah.
But I think that, COVID has accelerated. Like, COVID obviously is not something you should that hopefully ever has to happen again, but there are always going to be changes to a business, and how can you really do it differently? I think we'll come out of this, a lot of companies are going to come out with a lot less buildings in person that people work at, which is going to save them costs. There's going to be a lot more companies that are permanently working from home, which gives them ideas and people now that they can hire that they could have never, because a relocation was necessary. Now they can get some of the best people in the country because, hey, you can work from home, which never was an option. Like, that changes businesses in a huge way. Like, it opens up opportunity. Obviously, there are some, you can't do junk removal online and, pass it through a computer, but you can do things differently in different aspects.
Oh boy, here we
idea.
go.
But so you're always adapting, right? Like, you're always thinking about what's different.
And I think it was tough. Like, when we started doing contactless junk removal, we're like, how are we gonna do this? Because it's so much the customer experience. It's shaking their hands and looking them in the face and building that personality. And usually they're there while we're working, so they see how hard we're working and how you even take payment and all that type of stuff. And I think it was scary. There's definitely resistance within our organization and outside the organization. Like, how do we do this? And I think when you're talking about how I put myself out of business, that is super scary for an entrepreneur, because entrepreneurs think they're right. They don't think it's a big risk to start this business, because they think, I know all the numbers, I'm going to make it happen, it's going to be easy, or maybe it's going to be a little bit difficult, but I'm going to succeed at whatever it is. But when their plan to succeed has to adjust and change, we're okay with that.
Good old Allentown sounds right there. Yeah.
When their plan has to adjust and change, I mean, that's a tough pill to swallow, and not all entrepreneurs can do that.
Yeah, and I think going back to like becoming your own entrepreneur, and we see that kind of movement is increasing, especially from, I feel like our generation is like, let's work for ourselves, no more 9 to 5, whatever. But you take a look at the businesses who did really well during this pandemic, and a lot of them were the service-based, the things that people aren't getting college degrees for. Like, my dad owns a plumbing business, and my brother works for him now. It's an essential service, right? Like, it's almost, we glamorize entrepreneurship to be like the next big marketing firm or this or that. When in reality, it's like, these are the kind of places and the businesses that are going to thrive, the ones that are essential and that people aren't going into. It makes them even more essential. It makes them even more valuable.
And I think that's a valuable point too, of like, it's not just this massive billion-dollar organization. Like, you can also just own your own business by yourself for your whole life and be completely fine working 9 to 5 and make plenty of money, because it's also about what you want to do in life, what's important to you. The money is not there's a lot of miserable people that have a lot of money, and understanding that you can look at some entrepreneur from the outside and be like, they hustle, they do this, but you don't know what their at-home life looks like. You don't know what their life looks like in general, other than what you see. And don't model someone that you don't actually want to actually live their life. Like, just because they're successful, and there's some people that will preach crazy amount of hustle, some people will preach work a 20-hour work week. There's not a right answer, but you have to decide like what makes sense for you, and don't just look at what is an entrepreneur, because it's different for everybody. People are happy in different things than I am. And it would be silly for me to just be them, to just try to make it that would make me happy, because it just leaves you pretty empty.
I think everybody's opinion or view of an entrepreneur is all skewed by their experience. Like, did they have a dad who had to work, from what time does your dad leave in the morning?
Like 4 a.m.
4 a.m. Like, are you kidding me? My kids would be like, "Are you kidding?" That's crazy.
Yeah.
But do they have a dad who worked from 4 a.m., came home at 6, and then worked on the books at night till 10 o'clock at night? Or is their entrepreneurial vision like, hey, oh well, I see these Instagram influencers who have their own business, and all they do is party all the time, and they make money, or oh yeah, this person, even myself, we're doing really well. Unbelievable, more than I could ever thought of, but they don't know 15 years ago what it's like, where I'm like literally sitting in the shower like, holy crap, what did I get myself into? I'm losing everything, my house, everything, and that's after putting in 100 hours in a week. So that stuff we don't really glamorize. We glamorize the ending. And there's so much stuff that can be put in between there, where it's a rough roller coaster. And Michael Gerber talks about how 80% of businesses fail in the first 5 years, and the rest fail in the next 5 years. So it's 80% in the second 5. So you're looking at like 5 to 10% of businesses to last 10 years. And there's lots of people whose jobs have lasted 10 years. So it's not as exciting as people think it is. But I think you're right. You have to do what's best for you, what's best for your personality and your skill set. And, you can be super successful.
And it ties kind of into the work-life balance thing, which is this never-ending, I think, conversation/argument, because I think that in the same way that people look at entrepreneurs a certain way, people think work-life balance looks a certain way, and whatever way they think it looks, every other way is wrong. So like you can look at someone that works 4 a.m. and gets home at 6 and be like, they don't spend enough time with their family. Or you could say, well, how amazing is their time with their family when they are there? Because I know some people that might get home every single day at 4 and be with their family until 9, but they're on their phone the entire time. Is that quality time either? Is that a good work-life balance just because they're home more? So I think that's also though hard for people, because you work a little bit with your family too, so it's also an even more unique dynamic. But how do you manage your work-life balance? How do all of you manage work-life balance to be a crazy idea person that always is thinking of something new, but also turning off?
Yeah. I'm not a good role model. It's probably the worst thing, and especially now when I'm looking at my kids and they're 22 to 11, and you're like, how? And I think everybody, no matter what, it's always gonna be how quickly it turns. But we've had cool experiences where we went and visited franchises, and where we made like a tour where we're visiting Vancouver, Seattle, San Francisco, Salt Lake City, LA, all these different franchises. So we got to see all these cool cities, and that was a great family experience. But every day I ducked out for 2 or 3 hours to go visit and get shamelessly stealing great ideas, finding people who have awesome ideas and be able to bring them back to my own business. But yeah, I mean, for me, I know my wife's going to watch this eventually, but I really love what I do. Like, I have an extreme passion, so it's not really work. So when I don't go fishing and feel like, oh yeah, this is great, just sitting here in a boat and doing this reel, that doesn't make me excited. I don't go play pool or go bowling or hunt or all that type of stuff. Like, I truly love coming up with the business ideas, thinking them through, thinking the problems out, thinking of what it could be and where this crazy thing could go. Like, I just love it. And so for me, it's so cool, because it's just like, if you were a fisherman and you got to get paid to go fishing, like, how great would life be? I'm in that position. I'm in like the best of the best situations that anybody could ever even dream of, because I'm doing really well and I'm able to come up with new ideas, and that's really what my joy and my passion is. So, when I'm driving down the road and I come up with a new thing, my wife's always like, what are you thinking about? I hate that question, because I always tell her, and I'm like, man, I think we should start an HVAC company because it's a great idea. Or we're driving down, I'm like, I wonder how much it costs to install telephone poles. But like, my mind is always thinking, but like, that's really what I enjoy and I love to do. So it's a totally different thing. But
it's also the most dangerous spot to be, because like, I love what I do too, and the more you love it, the more that you always look at everything like it's not actual work, but your kids, their family may see it as, no, you're always working. So it is a hard balance. But I think there is positive value of that, of showing your kids like that you can really love what you do, and that if you are in a miserable job that you absolutely hate, you shouldn't be. You shouldn't do something you hate, period. But it is hard. Like, I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and it's no question, like, you're always kind of trying to, and I just always say, like, it's about the communication with your spouse and understanding that there are waves of really, really busy times, and there are waves that you're going to be able to be a little bit more present and just doing the best you can, but realizing that my family, or at least I think my wife, would rather have like a really unbelievably undistracted hour with me than me just saying I'm coming home early, but when I come home early, I work for a bunch of hours on my phone. Like, because I think the intentional time is what's important, not just you physically being there. Because everyone's working from home now, doesn't mean that they're always home. Like, I don't know. It's that, but I feel like that's hard. I feel like it's really hard. The more I feel like it's easier when you don't like what you do, because you can just check out immediately.
Right.
Yeah. Or not even not like what you do, but just, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've pushed to have no meetings on Friday so that, you know, I'm actually home. But the problem is I always break that rule, and you know, it's definitely
meetings.
It was something I don't really schedule meetings, but I still do stuff.
Yeah,
I go in the office or I go to somewhere, and you know, it's you know, for us, just recently we started scheduling dinner on Monday nights, which sounds pretty simple, but when you have kids in sports and kids working and all that type of stuff, just having a dinner together and putting that phone down, putting that phone away can be, you know, a big difference.
So last thing I want to talk about, and it's kind of revolving around COVID as well, but experience, education, all that kind of stuff, right? So you're into recruiting and you have to find people, which obviously is very difficult during this time. But I think it also kind of ties in with the whole idea of, you know, school's starting back up for most people, but it's not really starting up. And the education system in general was already debated constantly, and now it's even more like, well, wait a second. Now people are probably second guessing whether or not they are going to get the same education. Do they need it at all? What are your thoughts right now on, let's talk a little bit about recruiting, but like experience versus education. A lot of people, when they are either just getting out of school or maybe thinking about going into school, they try to decide, Siri's listening to me. Siri's the worst. Anyway, people are usually trying to get a job out of high school or get a job out of college, but the companies need experience, but how do you get experience without actually working a job? And how have you seen the education thing, since you're someone that, you know, you guys are relatively fresh out of school in comparison to us, especially you, Dave. No, just kidding. But how
40
do you feel
is
like
old.
How do you feel like that's changing now? Like, do you, like someone that's fresh out of school, like if you were going to go into school now and you were entirely online, what would that be like?
Yeah.
Well, hands-on is really important. I mean, there's a lot of learners that, especially like in the field I went for, which was the video production, I can't learn that online. You have to actually pick up a camera and you have to, like, you know, have somebody teach you how to use it. You have to set up a shoot, you know, all that thing. And I just feel like depending on what you're learning, maybe depending on the degree, some things might not be as good online. And as far as like experience versus education, I know you've seen this a lot. Like, somebody comes out of school with a criminal justice degree and they want to apply for 1-800-GOT-JUNK. You're like, oh, you just wasted 4 years when you could have had experience doing customer service or something. But yeah, it's kind of like, depending on if you actually use your degree to help you with your career, it could be worth it. And then other times I can definitely see where it's kind of like a, you know, you might think it'd be like wasteful of time when you could have been out getting experience or interning or something like that.
Right. Yeah. I feel like if I was heading into college now, I would definitely take a gap year or do something and try to utilize, try to utilize like my personal network or something and just be like, can I shadow you at your job or something like that, an internship without experience? Because I mean, like, you can sit on a Zoom call for what, $60,000 for a semester? Like, what? Why don't you just download Masterclass and learn something that I saw that they're doing, like a spin-off of college where you can take like calculus classes and things like that. And the trailer got me excited for calculus. I hate math, but it's like, why would I pay college tuition for that? And experiences too, like, they don't have to be these elaborate internships for like Fortune 500 companies. It's all about owning it. So if you work at Chick-fil-A, one of my good friends, he worked at Chick-fil-A because he couldn't get an internship in college. He owned that so much And he posted on LinkedIn every single day about his experience, his customer interactions. He wrote a book, and he's 20. That, you know, I don't even know if it's a great book, but it doesn't matter because it means he still owned it. You know, he owned his experience, and I think that's huge. Doesn't matter what you do.
And that's what I just think is people should, when they get done with high school, take 1 year, intern, and do something when you don't need to make a lot of money because money's not even important. Figure out what you actually like to do, and then decide if college is right for you. But like, because there's so many things, it's like other than the few things these days that need a degree, you could intern for 4 years, and if you were to think to yourself, if someone contacted you and was like, I want to pay you $50,000 a year to just shadow you all the time, they'd get a better education in that 4 years, and yet they wouldn't even have to pay you if you just were going to be helpful and around anyway. But people don't like the experience that you get from things, and that's why there's not a such thing as like a bad job when you're young and when you're just starting in this, because you can intern for the worst company ever. It doesn't matter. You're still going to learn. You're going to learn what not to do. You're going to learn what to do and what they do well that maybe you should implement. But people are just, I think, so stuck, and I think parents, you know, sometimes can be to blame with that because it was different when growing up now and just the education and what we have. But I think it would really be interesting to see like what education, how this changes things, because I don't think parents are super happy spending the money they're spending now to have their kids sit online. And how will that change moving forward, and how will that change? Everything's already becoming more and more direct to consumer with YouTube and training and learning anything you want anywhere, that these professors could end up being entrepreneurs and having their own masterclass that they sell, and you get to learn from the best of the best. I don't know, it's just interesting. But
technology's making it so much better. Like we were scared as kids, you won't get anywhere unless you go to college. Like in high school, they're like, you will not do anything you want to. You will be working at McDonald's flipping burgers if you don't go to school.
Yeah.
So that scares you into thinking, I need a career right now, and I need to pick at 18, and then I'm going to have to do that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I remember it was 7th grade. I remember my computer teacher came in, and we were like the only people left in the class were the ones who didn't get invited to like the honors ceremony for like 7th grade. I was really bad at math, so I didn't make the cut. And he was like, "You guys, you need to step it up. Because if you guys don't make it to ceremonies like this, like you're not going anywhere." And I still remember that moment. Like
that's still a chip on your shoulder.
I still was like, this is stupid, and I know it. But it's just funny how, you know, perspectives change, and it always does.
I think 2 things is, one thing, when I was at an accounting firm, I remember one time I was interviewing this guy, and he graduated the same year I did high school. And so he was looking for his first job. He had a 4.0, went to Westchester. And, you know, I sat there interviewing him at the restaurant, and now I have, you know, 12 sales reps, 65 offices that I was covering at the time. And I'm like, I'm not even going to hire this guy because he doesn't have any life experience. And I felt bad for the people who are in college, but like if you're in college, then take that time to get those internships your freshman, sophomore, junior year or whatever, so that you can go out and you can just see what life is a little bit more like. Because then when you're in the conversation, you're being interviewed, and you can talk intelligently about experiences. That's going to make you a lot more attractive than just saying, hey, you have a great GPA, but it's just a general business or communications degree. What do you know about communications? What do you know about business? And they don't. And another one is, so Jason Weaver, my right-hand man that we talked about, you know, he doesn't have a college degree. He jumped on the junk trucks, I think when he was 18 or 19 years old, making $8 an hour, working like 20 hours a week, not even full time. And now he's running a $15 million business. Makes a lot more than $8 an hour, but he's learned so much stuff along the way. I would put him up against all the best minds in business because he just has the experience. He understands how things work. And you know, it's crazy when you take somebody like that who, you know, was working at Walmart or Chick-fil-A, but he has the talent, he has the skills, he just needed the experience to go with it.
Yeah. And that's why sometimes you gotta take chances on people and realize that some people, like a lot of very successful people, didn't go to college, or some people went to college and they had great things either. It's more about like people, like understanding that the right person and the right opportunity. Like too many people I think are afraid to make like a terrible hire and what's it going to look like if they hire someone and they're not right. But it's like sometimes you get great people by just trusting your gut. This person has zero experience whatsoever, but they seem like they are excited about life and they want to learn.
attitude is so much in
in
life.
You can't teach attitude.
No. And same with like internships. So many companies require you to be like a senior to get an internship. Like, why not just go work at like a local store or whatever and be like, go above and beyond and kind of turn it into your own internship or something to that capacity. You need to just own what you do.
You get out what you put into it. Like,
or
you
just
go
come
through
work for us.
school.
Yeah. Or come on the
or
truck.
them. Scott, you're hired interns for free, right?
Yeah. Well, so many people I think just don't. Yeah, they don't give any effort into something that I always thought it'd be really cool to take. Like, I don't think I'll ever do it, but I would love to take a year and like film the process of going to work the most entry-level job ever at some place like McDonald's. I always call it McDonald's, but I don't mean McDonald's like a mean way, and just see by working unbelievably hard and trying your absolute best how you can rise in any organization if you because so few people actually do. So many people check in and check out and don't give the extra effort that when you see someone that does, you like, it's just rare these days. And I think that if you actually just give an unbelievable effort into any job you're at, good things can happen. You could be, a general manager at a McDonald's probably makes decent money, but the person that just got this $7 an hour job at McDonald's is probably like, I'm here for 2 months. Well, why don't you just like work really, really well, see what happens, and then you can always get a job.
I have this conversation with Zach at home every night about Papa John's employees because he's like, why can't I find them? But the ones that come in are high schoolers who don't care and they just want some cash from the tips. But there are a few gems in the bunch that are like, I actually want to learn and I want to apply myself, and then we can talk about like the opportunities in the future. People are excited about that. You just got to find them.
Yep. Yeah, there's only, I think, you can only teach so much. I think you naturally can kind of get that instinct. But then it also goes into, could you as a manager continue to pour more vision and do more things that would get people that seem not interested to be interested. There definitely, I think, is a topic about that in general, about how you can hopefully transform people. But anyway, the entrepreneurial roller coaster is quite a wild ride, would you say?
Absolutely.
Well, any big advice you would give to someone that's thinking about starting or is starting and a little frustrated right now with situations?
Yeah, have a plan, stick to the plan. And I think the biggest problems on entrepreneurs is usually not following their P&L, not looking at their finances. They think they can just sell, and they'll get out of it eventually. And that's not usually how it works. You have to monitor expenses and that type of stuff. But I think actually one of the biggest things is probably finding a mentor, finding somebody who you can talk to who's been through this roller coaster before that can calm you down. Or, when you're really excited, be like, okay, well, to put a little bit of money away. Or when you're really, really down and like, hey, I got to bail. The only people who get hurt on roller coasters are the ones who jump out halfway through the ride. So, I think finding that mentor, I have a lot of great mentors.
How would you recommend someone finds one?
I would call you. No.
Thanks.
So,
I think a lot of people want mentors, but people don't like giving out advice. Like, they don't like helping.
See, I think that it's different. I think people want to give out advice. They want to be able to give. People love talk, and maybe just my personality, but I sit down and I talk with a guy who owns a vacuum store, and by the end of the thing, I'm finding all kinds of information out. It's just even interacting with somebody at Starbucks, and I come back and I'm talking to my wife, and she's like, I'm like, hey, he does like $2.2 million in sales. He has a net profit of 20%. She's like, how do you get people to talk about that? But I think the real thing is people want to give advice. People want to be known, and for me, it was just networking and talking to a couple people, and they hooked me up with others. And I have some like awesome mentors. When you're talking about starting at McDonald's, this guy started at Wendy's as a cook after college, graduated there to owning multiple units of Wendy's in a very short period of time. He'd be a great person to have on your podcast too. But there are those stories of people who've done unbelievable jobs. And so yeah, I would, for me, it's talking to people at church.
So just go through your connections.
Or even better, try to find somebody. Look on LinkedIn, look on, the chamber, look in the newspaper of people who are, and call the person up, say, hey, can we have coffee? What does that really hurt? And if they know you're not trying to sell, like, hey, I just started a business. It's really, really small. What do you think? And, it's been interesting for our ad agency, which I'm a minority owner, but our main equity partner, she's been reaching out to other agencies, say, hey, could you coach me? Could you, give me some advice about where, and everybody's been open to it. Like they want to help other people. And you also don't want other people to go through the downfalls that you've done.
That's cool. Any final words?
Yeah, I mean, tap into your personal network for mentors. And like I said before, just if you do a job, do it, go above and beyond, and someone will notice. Like I was a tour guide and I met some really cool people who I gave tours to. Like reach out, make your business card, whatever, give them your number, see if they'll just respond. Like cold call people, see if they'll answer. What are they going to say, no or not answer? Who cares?
Yeah, and I think that's also important to realize that there will be people that say no and that you're not going to hear back from, and it's okay. You contact 100 people and ask for an internship, 3 might respond and say, sure, but you got to keep just going. And I think people naturally, I always get a sense that I have a bunch of random people that reach out to me about that kind of thing, and you have to realize that people are very busy, and you have to also realize that a lot of people ask them those kind of things. So trying to figure out if you know info about people and you can provide some value to them in that initial conversation by understanding what you might be able to help or learn from, but also be honest that I just do want to learn. I don't know a lot, so I'm not applying for, Ben, who's full-time for us now, came on for free, moved across the country with no job, worked at other job just so he could intern for free, and flat out said he didn't have experience, but he wanted to learn and he's willing to do whatever it took. And now he works full-time here. That only happens because he was willing to just make it,
everything,
and not try to apply for a job he couldn't work for, and not try to make up stories. He was like, I saw you were hiring, I'm not qualified, but I would come for free and work he worked an overnight shift just so he could intern for free during the day. That's what you got to do, but people don't want to put in that work,
right?
And when you do, I think that people will take you. When people see someone working that hard, it's fun to be around those kind of people, because they inspire you to work harder, because this dude's working for free, I better work harder than they are. So, well, thanks for being on. This is great. I think this will be hopefully really helpful to some people that are going through some interesting entrepreneurial times right now. So thanks for being on the podcast.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So thanks as always for watching. If you are new to this channel, consider subscribing and commenting below. We'd love to have more people on this podcast. In the season 2 of the podcast, we want to interview a lot more people going through different things and different topics, different businesses. So if you're watching this and you feel like you'd be a great guest, or you know someone that would be, we would love to have them on the podcast. So thanks as always for watching. We'll talk to you guys real soon.